Russia is on the move in Syria. Moscow has been sending powerful military equipment to that war-torn nation, and the United States wants to know why.
Russia says it just wants to help Syria in its fight against Islamic terrorists. But as George Thomas reports, the United States believes Moscow has ulterior motives.
Ruslan Lviv says he knew something was brewing in Syria when families of Russian soldiers started contacting him in early August.
That's when we first started getting messages that our Russian military contractors are being sent to Syria.
Lviv is a Russian political activist and blogger. He says Russia has moved a small but significant military force into Syria in recent weeks.
After our first investigation, we published the number of military equipment we thought was there. Based on the images of soldiers being brought to Syria on military ships, we thought there was no less than 1,000 of them.
According to the New York Times, satellite images from the Syrian port city of Latakia show Russia has also moved about a dozen T-90 tanks, 15 howitzers, 35 armored personnel carriers, 200 Marines, and housing for as many as 1,500 personnel.
All this shows is that Russia has made a qualitative shift in its behavior.
Moscow has denied that it is building up its military presence, saying that it instead wants to help Syria's president, Bashar al-Assad, fight the Islamic State terror group.
I would like to say that we are supporting the government of Syria in the fight against a terrorist aggression and are offering and will continue to offer it necessary military technical assistance.
And Assad needs the help. He's been losing territory to ISIS a lot faster this year than when the war started 4 years ago. Troop morale is also down significantly. But Pentagon officials say Moscow's sudden military moves into Syria isn't just about fighting ISIS. They believe Russia is ultimately trying to protect Assad, a longtime Russian ally. And Putin agrees. He told CBS's 60 Minutes that Assad must remain in power to avoid another Libya. However, the U.S. has repeatedly called for the Syrian dictator to step down. And the Secretary of Defense says Russia's moves to defend Assad will only encourage the radical Islamic views of ISIS.
To pursue the defeat of ISIL without, at the same time, pursuing a political transition is to fuel the very kind of extremism that underlies ISIL. And if that's the Russian view, that's a logical contradiction.
Russia's intervention has forced a meeting between Putin and Obama in New York next week. The two haven't met in 15 months, and the U.S. wants to know what Russia's long-term military intentions are in Syria. George Thomas, CBN News.
Putin will also be addressing the United Nations on Monday, and right now Pope Francis is there in New York. He's speaking to the UN today and to a huge crowd at Madison Square Garden. Charlene Aaron has that story from the CBN Newsroom. Charlene?
Gordon, tens of thousands of people greeted the Pope as he arrived in New York, and 1 million may see him this weekend in Philadelphia. Abigail Robertson has this look at the Pope's visit to New York and the impact of his speech to Congress in Washington Thursday.
By the massive crowds he draws, it seems Pope Francis might just be the most loved man in America. Today, his busy New York schedule begins with a speech to the United Nations General Assembly. Then he visits the 9/11 Memorial and tours Central Park, welcomed by some 80,000 lucky ticket holders, then finishes with Mass at Madison Square Garden. This follows the Pope's historic day in Washington, where his address to Congress still has both sides of the aisle singing his praises.
Whatever your political stripe, whatever part of your country you're from, he spoke to all of us.
Congress, maybe America, took a breath for a moment, a pause, and reflected on something deeply beautiful. I was proud to be there.
The Pope addressed one of his largest crowds on Capitol Hill, where more than 50,000 people watched him speak on jumbotrons, the first time a Pope ever addressed Congress. Afterward, he waved to the crowd from the speaker's balcony and spoke inspiring words in his native Spanish tongue.
People love him, people follow him, and there is a great impact in the people when he speaks to them.
During his address, the pontiff urged lawmakers to protect every human life and unite in hope and healing for a world racked by unrest.
Our efforts must aim at restoring hope, righting wrongs, maintaining commitments, and thus promoting the well-being of individuals and of peoples.
Pope Francis continues to get political in his speeches, discussing issues like the refugee crisis, climate control, and abortion. Regarding the refugees, Pope Francis encouraged people to remember the Golden Rule and that it's our responsibility to protect and defend human life at every stage of development. One lawmaker expressed disappointment that there was no mention of the gospel.
What I think I was very surprised about was that as a leader of the church, there was no mention of the gospel. Very much a missed opportunity. I think the world needs to hear that, and particularly from their spiritual leader.
Nagma Abedini, wife of Pastor Saeed held prisoner in Iran, says she hopes the Pope speaks more forcefully about religious freedom at the United Nations, a topic she feels he ignored in Washington.
I was expecting more about religious freedom. I really pray that, for the Pope, that he would God would really direct his path and what he is to say. But I really hope this issue of Christian persecution, religious freedom is addressed.
The Pope will end his 6-day apostolic journey in Philadelphia this weekend, where he will attend the World Meeting of Families. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Democrats in the Senate have blocked a bill that would have stopped taxpayer money from going to Planned Parenthood. The move has gained strength after videos showed Planned Parenthood making money by harvesting aborted baby organs. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is trying to avoid a government shutdown next week over the issue. So is House Speaker John Boehner. The Hill reports House Republicans will see if they can avoid a shutdown for now and then later try to stop federal money from going to Planned Parenthood when the House and the Senate combine their budget bills. Well, Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson came under fire after his statement on Meet the Press Sunday that he would not support a Muslim for president. But a new poll from Rasmussen shows that many Americans agree with him. 51% of likely voters say they would not be willing to vote for a Muslim president. Only 28% would support a Muslim in the White House, and 20% say they're undecided. Carson later said he could support a Muslim who rejected certain parts of Islam. Carson's fundraising spiked after his original comments. And in the Middle East, Israeli archaeologists may have discovered the tombs of ancient Jewish heroes known as the Maccabees. They say a Byzantine Christian gravesite may hold the key. John Wagi brings us that story from Jerusalem.
There is a place of honor, of dignity to the Maccabean in Christianity. And we can conclude that ancient Christianity, like we, the archaeologists, seek the ancient tomb of the Maccabean.
While you won't find their story in the Bible, Mattatyahu the Hasmonean and his 5 sons led a revolt against Greek rulers here about 160 years before Jesus. They cleansed the Jewish temple in Jerusalem from idolatry. Hanukkah commemorates their victory. The discovery is about a mile from the modern Israeli city of Modi'in, in the area where the Maccabees would have lived.
You can see behind me there is a burial niche, and at the bottom of it there is a mosaic floor. The fact that there's a cross on a mosaic floor is not something we're used to finding.
That's because of its significance to Byzantine Christians from the 6th century A.D. So why would the grave have been at this site? Archaeologist Dan Shachar explains.
The Maccabees, they removed the Greek Empire presence from what is now modern Israel, and they established an independent Jewish state, which makes it significant both to Judaism and Christianity. The actual books of the Maccabees were canonized to the Catholic Bible and the Greek Orthodox Bible, the version, not in our Jewish Bible.
Archaeologist Amit Re'em suggests Byzantine Christians found the original tomb and redecorated it with the mosaic.
It will not worry me as an archaeologist to find unique cross like this here. It's a symbol, it's a clue that unique persons, figures were buried here.
Jewish historian Josephus Flavius wrote about the Maccabean tombs in 2 ancient texts. He described them as impressive structures made of fine stone, surrounded by columns with pyramid-shaped roofs.
All the circumstantial evidence, the geographic, answer the descriptions of ancient historians like Josephus Flavius. There's a lot of evidence you could see plastered all over this rock, which tells us that very possibly there was something monumental on top of it. Maybe something which answers the description of pyramids on top of it.
Shachar believes once they determine the importance of this site to the Byzantines, the Jewish mystery of the whereabouts of the Maccabees' tombs may also be solved. John Waggy, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Very amazing story, Gordon.
It is an amazing story, and we'll give you more information as archaeologists make determinations as to what's that site, but it's good to remember the Maccabees. That's where we get Hanukkah and the miracle of the oil, where they had cleansed the temple. Just imagine, the Greeks had taken over Jerusalem. They set up a statue of Zeus in the middle of the temple, and they sacrificed pigs on the altar there to Zeus. They desecrated the temple. The Maccabees came through and they cleansed it, and they only had enough oil as prescribed by the Torah. They only had enough oil to last 1 day. And it takes 8 days to get a new batch of oil if you do it the proper way, the way the Torah requires. That 1 day of oil lasted 8 days. And that's the miracle of the oil, and that's why we celebrate Hanukkah today. But it'll be great to find out where exactly they're buried. So stay tuned. We'll have more on this story as it develops.